So I want to start with a question. Why would any administration choose to target highly educated professionals who are, absolutely critical to our public health?
Right.
Specifically nurses. Why would you cut off their access to education funding? It feels like a stealth attack hidden in, boring bureaucratic policy.
And that's exactly what critics are calling it, a stealth attack. Because we're talking about a recent action from the Department of Education. It's about federal graduate student loans.
Okay.
But what makes this so alarming to a lot of observers isn't just the idea of a financial cap. It's who it hits the hardest.
And that is?
Highly educated professionals, predominantly women, in fields that are just essential to public health. We're talking about advanced practice nurses.
Exactly. So this isn't just some, arcane financial policy. It's about connecting what looks like a minor bureaucratic shift to this massive ideological blueprint.
Project 2025.
Project 2025. And our goal here today is to really unpack that link. We need to understand how capping loans for nursing students is, as some argue, a surgical tool for implementing this sweeping vision from the Mandate for Leadership.
And to do that, we're looking at a few layers of source material. We've got really detailed, I'd say sobering, data analysis from the Institute for College Access and Success TICAS. That data shows exactly who relies on these loans, how much debt they're carrying. But crucially, we're also leaning on these extensive critical analyses of the Project 2025 agenda.
From groups like Democracy Forward and the LDF.
Right. And they're framing this policy not as some kind of fiscal reform, but as a deliberate tactic, a tactic designed to reshape American society along very distinct ideological lines.
The claims being made by these critics are, frankly, extraordinary. They're calling this a direct attack on working women and something that could potentially devastate U.S. healthcare access. So let's unpack this step by step and start with the technical mechanics of the change itself.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's establish the ground floor here, financially speaking. Before any of these proposed changes, how did a student actually pay for a master's or a doctoral nursing program? These can run well into the six figures.
They can. And historically, graduate students have relied on sort of a two-part federal safety net. The first part, the most structured part, is the direct unsubsidized loan.
Okay, the direct loan.
Yeah. And for most standard graduate programs, that loan gives you a maximum of $20,500 per year.
That's it.
Per year. And there's an aggregate limit of $138,500. And that includes any debt you still have from your undergrad degree. So that's the foundation.
But, $20,000 a year, that barely covers a semester at some of these universities, let alone a full year of tuition, fees, living expenses, especially for these highly specialized programs.
Precisely. And that is where the Grad PLUS loan program became the critical lifeline for so many people.
The PLS loan?
Grad PLUS. These loans are available up to the full cost of attendance, minus whatever other aid you've received. But here's the key feature, the thing that made these high-cost, high-return professional degrees even possible for most people.
Which was?
No aggregate cap.
No cap at all.
None. So if your program costs, say, $160,000 over 3 years, the Grad PLUS loan covered the entire gap that the direct unsubsidized loan couldn't even touch.
And the analysis we're looking at shows that many students, especially in these expensive health fields, they weren't just using Grad PLUS as a supplement.
No.
They were using it as the main way to finance their degree, which is a huge indicator of just how high tuition costs have gotten.
It's a massive indicator. And it's vital to recognize that the system, as it was, kind of acknowledged the unique financial needs of these fields.
How so?
Well, certain health professions programs, think dentistry, medical school, some pharmacy programs, they already had higher annual borrowing limits under that basic direct unsubsidized loan program. They got more than the standard Master of Arts student, for example. The system recognized that the higher costs were a necessary capital investment for a high-value career.
Now, this push to constrain how much graduate students can borrow, it's not brand new, is it? It seems like it has a pretty long legislative history.
It does, which suggests this has been a coordinated political effort for a while now. Just look at the 118th Congress. We saw proposals like the College Cost Reduction Act, the CCRA.
CCRA, right.
And this wasn't about just, tweaking interest rates. The CCRA proposed entirely eliminating the Grad PLUS loan program by 2028.
Eliminating it?
Gone.
Yeah.
And in its place, it would have introduced hard aggregate caps. $100,000 total for a standard graduate program and $150,000 for a professional program.
Wow. Going from basically unlimited access with Grad PLUS to a hard cap of $150,000,
Yes.
that's a monumental shift.
It's a complete paradigm shift. And there was another one, the GOL Act, which was even more restrictive. It proposed caps as low as $65,000 for graduate studies.
So Congress was debating these caps, but they didn't pass.
They never passed. And this is exactly where the recent administrative action comes in. This is the stealth move that critics are talking about. The Department of Education, through an administrative reclassification, basically bypassed that whole messy legislative fight to get a similar outcome, but only for very specific fields.
Okay, let's slow down on this technical reclassification, because this seems to be the core of the entire attack narrative. What exactly did the Department of Education do, and how did they pull it off without Congress?
They quietly changed the regulatory definition that they applied to certain graduate programs.
The definition.
Yes, historically, programs that were defined as professional degrees, they often require clinical placements, specialized accreditation. They qualified for those higher loan limits we talked about, higher aggregate caps. This administrative action effectively took graduate nursing programs. We're talking registered nursing, nursing administration, clinical nursing.
All the big ones.
All of them. And social work, too. It moved them out of that professional category and reclassified them as just general graduate programs subject to the lower limits.
So wait, instead of being treated financially like a dental program or a law program, a Master of Science in Nursing is now treated financially like a Master of Arts in History,
That's it.
even if the tuition and the clinical requirements are worlds apart.
That is precisely the implication. And you can see why critics immediately jumped on this, calling it a direct attack on the nursing profession, because it suddenly erects these massive financial barriers in a field that has always required substantial borrowing to enter at an advanced level.
Let's use a concrete example, maybe using the data from TICUS, just to show the scale of this financial roadblock we're talking about. So imagine a student. They want to pursue a 3-year nurse practitioner program, and it costs $140,000 in tuition and fees.
Okay, $140K. Under the old system, that student could take out the maximum direct unsubsidized loan. Let's say, they have $10,000 left over from undergrad debt. So they can access roughly $128,000 under that program's cap.
Yeah.
The remaining $12,000 plus living expenses, books, supplies, all of that would be easily covered by the Grad PLUS loan.
Because it had no cap.
Because it had no cap. The student graduates, yes, with high debt, but with a viable path into a critical, high-paying career.
Okay, now let's look at it under this new reclassification. Let's apply that proposed CCRA cap of $100,000 for a master's degree. What happens now?
Well, if that $100,000 cap were implemented or, a similar limit was enforced administratively, that student is now facing a $40,000 shortfall just for tuition.
40 grand.
Just for tuition. That doesn't even include rent, food, anything else. And unless that student has access to $40,000 in, generational wealth or can get risky private loans, that path to becoming a nurse practitioner is immediately blocked. It's just gone.
And it's not just master's degrees, right? We're talking about doctoral programs too. DNP programs, PhDs in nursing, the degrees you need to become faculty.
Absolutely. The doctoral programs in registered nursing, which are essential for creating the professors who train the next generation of nurses, they also frequently exceed $100,000 in debt.
So when you take away Grad PLUS, and then you hamstring the entire field by reclassifying it to a lower limit, you're effectively reserving the highest levels of the nursing profession for students who are already wealthy.
You're creating a wealth gate. Now, we do have to address the counter-argument here. Proponents of these caps, they often frame them as a necessary tool for cost control.
The argument being, if students can't borrow endless amounts of federal money, universities will finally be forced to lower their sky-high tuition prices.
That's the theory.
Is it just a theory? Is there any evidence that the immediate effect of cutting off capital is that institutions lower tuition? Or is the immediate effect simply restricting access for people who can't pay?
The sources we're looking at argue very forcefully that the immediate verifiable effect is absolutely a restriction of access.
Okay.
While the long-term, pie-in-the-sky goal might be to pressure institutions, the short-term reality is that students from low-wealth backgrounds are instantly disqualified from these high-cost, high-return professional degrees. It severely limits the career capital available to them. It's a financial gate, and only the wealthy can pass through it right now.
And this is exactly why the critics claim the Department of Education tried to quietly make a change. They hoped nobody would notice this little reclassification.
And it completely backfired.
It backfired. Once the industry, the universities, the nursing organizations realized the massive implications for the healthcare workforce pipeline, there was an uproar. It was a technical change with what they're calling catastrophic social consequences.
It seems almost unbelievable that one small rule change from the Department of Education could set off such a huge political firestorm. But to understand the fury, you really have to look past the spreadsheets and look into the core ideological documents that are reportedly driving this agenda.
And that means we have to talk about Project 2025.
We do.
Project 2025 it's a vast, incredibly well-funded effort. It was organized by the Heritage Foundation, and it involves over 100 conservative groups. It's basically a detailed playbook, a staffing and policy plan, the mandate for leadership, designed to allow for rapid, far-reaching policy changes through executive control, assuming a specific administration takes office.
And critics are not just suggesting a link. They are arguing that this loan cap policy is not a standalone fiscal choice. It is a specific, actionable execution of that much larger Project 2025 agenda.
Okay, so let's unpack that link very carefully, because this is probably the most politically charged part of this whole analysis. What is the core ideological argument here, according to the critics, regarding higher education and personal life choices?
The sources we're examining state that a key tenet of this agenda is the belief, and I'm quoting here, that expensive higher education subsidies are misguided interventions that push young people away from marriage and children.
Wow. So the argument, as these critics interpret it, is that by enabling young people, and the subtext here is implicitly women, to access these high-debt, high-status professional careers later in life, the federal government is effectively subsidizing the postponement of traditional family roles.
The postponement of marriage and childbearing.
Yeah.
That's the interpretation. And the goal, therefore, is reportedly to reduce things like student debt forgiveness and these generous federal subsidies to essentially encourage young people to pursue shorter, less expensive career paths.
Which would make marriage and having children an earlier life choice.
An earlier and more likely life choice, rather than spending your 20s and early 30s pursuing expensive graduate education. It's a mechanism, critics argue, to enforce a specific traditional social structure, and they're doing it through financial constraint.
That reframes this entire thing. A financial rule becomes this powerful lever for social change. By directly limiting the financing for these professional pathways, especially the ones that require huge amounts of graduate debt, they're actively limiting professional autonomy for millions of people.
And when you look at who is being targeted by this specific reclassification, the focus gets even sharper. Nursing, a profession that is overwhelmingly dominated by women. So limiting financial access to the advanced degrees you need to reach these high-paying independent roles like a nurse practitioner or a nursing professor. Critics are calling that a direct attack on women working.
It's a direct impediment to financial independence and upward mobility in a career path that is predominantly female.
Exactly.
And if you look at the broader proposals in Project 2025, you see the same pattern, right? There seems to be a consistent alignment with limiting women's professional and reproductive autonomy.
Absolutely. The analysis from organizations like Democracy Forward points this out very clearly. You see proposals to completely eliminate the White House Gender Policy Council,
which is the body tasked with promoting policies around contraception access, preventing gender-based violence, women's health equity.
All of it. The blueprint stated priority shifts to coordinating efforts that emphasize a much narrower, more traditional vision of family and promoting life.
The critics argue this entire movement is designed to reorient the federal government's focus away from comprehensive gender equity.
And it doesn't stop there. The blueprint also includes steps to restrict access to medication abortion and to reverse previous administration efforts to shield the medical records of patients who seek abortions across state lines. The entire posture shifts toward enforcing a very specific social model.
And this agenda to dismantle education extends far beyond just graduate loans. The Project 2025 blueprint explicitly calls for the complete abolishment of the Department of Education.
The whole thing, which would dismantle the agency that's not only responsible for loans, but also for enforcing civil rights protections in schools all across the country.
It also seems to target early education, which is a huge support for working mothers. The blueprint proposes eliminating the Head Start program.
Head Start serves over 1 million children, and significantly 28% of those participants are Black.
So if you eliminate Head Start, you instantaneously place this massive financial and logistical burden right back onto low-income families. often single mothers.
forcing them into a choice. Find expensive private childcare, which is often impossible, or reduce their own participation in the workforce. Again, it fits the pattern of making a full-time professional career more financially and practically difficult, especially for women.
And then there's the explicit proposal to control what's taught in schools. The blueprint calls for restricting access to inclusive, accurate, and quality instruction by banning teachings on race or gender.
The CRT bans.
Right, the critical race theory bans, an attempt to control the curriculum from kindergarten all the way up.
So when you put all these proposals together, you limit the high-debt professional paths, you reduce access to childcare, and you control the educational cap. Content critics say the conclusion is pretty clear. The loan cap acts as a crucial financial filter.
The filter for who gets to achieve that high professional status and financial independence.
Right. And it primarily affects women from lower wealth backgrounds, which thereby supports that ideological goal of discouraging long professional training in favor of earlier family formation.
That really deepens the context here. So in the view of these critics, it's not just a budget cut. It's an active mechanism for socioeconomic reengineering.
Exactly.
This ideological push, executed through what looks like a neutral financial cap, it just slams directly into the racial and economic inequalities that already exist in this country.
Just like an accelerant.
Yeah. As we said, if you restrict access to loans, you're going to disproportionately harm communities that have less generational wealth. And in the U.S., that means Black and Hispanic students are going to bear the brunt of this.
And the thickest data on this it's just irrefutable. It provides clear evidence of this existing disparity. We are talking about students of color having higher rates of borrowing, accumulating substantially more debt than their white peers, and still facing huge economic hurdles even after they graduate.
Let's spend some real time on these numbers from Tickus because they are just staggering. For master's degrees, 70% of Black students borrow. The overall average is 53%.
A huge gap.
And for professional degrees, it gets even worse. The borrowing rate for Black students jumps to 91%.
91.
Compared to 79% overall. And Hispanic and Latino students are also highly reliant on these loans, borrowing at a rate of 71% for their master's degrees.
That extreme reliance on borrowing, it speaks directly to the generational wealth gap. Black and Hispanic families, on average, just possess significantly less wealth to contribute to graduate education compared to white families.
So for them, federal loans aren't just a supplement.
No, they're not a supplement. They are the sole ticket to entry. For many, it's the only way they can even consider these programs.
And then the cumulative debt burden just compounds this problem. The data shows Black students carry substantially higher average cumulative debt than the overall average at every single degree level.
Every single one.
Let's just focus on the doctoral level for impact. The average cumulative debt for a Black doctoral student is $103,085.
Okay, $103,000. Now compare that to the overall average for all doctoral students, which is $63,557.
That is a $40,000 difference.
It's a nearly $40,000 disparity in debt before that student even enters the workforce. That isn't trivial. I mean, that $40,000 represents a major head start in economic mobility for their white peers.
So if you introduce a hard cap like that proposed $100,000 cap for a master's or $150,000 for a professional degree, you are instantly creating an impossible barrier for the very demographic that already has to borrow the most just to get in the game.
You're using the cap to lock out the very students that federal lending was originally supposed to help achieve upward mobility. It's a complete inversion of the original intent.
And this policy, it also directly impacts the institutions that are so essential for supporting these communities. The Tickus data really emphasizes the context of historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs.
Right, and it shows that high debt levels, often over $100,000 or even $150,000, are common across many of their graduate programs.
So restricting the flow of capital to students at HBCUs is, you could argue, a severe blow to racial economic equity. You're undermining their ability to provide these key pathways for upward mobility in fields like nursing, teaching, social work.
And the debt trap just gets tighter after graduation. The sources we're looking at show that for students of color, especially Black students, even with high educational attainment, they often earn less than their white peers.
There's data from 2018 showing that Black women and men with bachelor's degrees earned median annual incomes that were significantly lower than their white counterparts.
So let's just recap that. They borrow more to get the same credential. They graduate with, on average, $40,000 more in debt.
And then they're less likely to earn a comparable salary.
Which makes repayment exponentially more difficult and burdensome, even with relief measures that are supposed to help, like the income-driven repayment plans.
This whole cycle is why the critics are arguing that cutting access to debt relief or capping loans will actively prevent Black college graduates from building wealth. Education debt remains this massive obstacle to economic advancement, specifically homeownership.
Which is the key mechanism for generational wealth transfer in America.
Exactly. It's the ultimate dilemma, isn't it? Limiting borrowing might, in theory, put some pressure on universities, but the immediate tangible result is the effective denial of career capital to low-wealth students who are seeking to enter high-paying fields.
And critics suggest that if the ideological goal of Project 2025 is to encourage a specific social structure, then restricting the economic mobility of Black and Hispanic professionals by weaponizing debt caps, well, it serves that end perfectly. It makes high professional status inaccessible unless you already have that pre-existing generational wealth.
Okay, let's pivot a little and focus on the immediate public health crisis this policy change could accelerate. By specifically targeting nursing education, we're moving out of policy theory and into really tangible consequences for patient care.
This is where it gets very real for a lot of people. This is where the reclassification of advanced nursing degrees becomes, as critics say, a public welfare threat.
Because these advanced degrees, a Master of Science in Nursing, a Doctorate of Nursing Practice, they aren't just extra credentials. They're mandated prerequisites for becoming a nurse practitioner, an NP, or for becoming nursing faculty.
And nurse practitioners are absolutely vital, especially in primary care. In many states, NPs can operate independently. They serve as primary care providers, and they often fill the gaps where physicians are scarce.
We're talking about rural and underserved areas.
Exactly, the very places that need healthcare providers the most.
So if you restrict the ability to finance these degrees, you are directly choking the pipeline of qualified practitioners who would go on to serve those communities. The nursing shortage is already at a crisis level. We need more NPs, not fewer.
And the problem just gets compounded on the education front. Who is going to train the next generation of registered nurses if we can't finance the advanced degrees needed for nursing faculty?
It creates an educational bottleneck.
A huge one. If aspiring faculty can't afford the doctoral degrees they need because of these loan caps, the shortage of nurses we have today becomes a catastrophic shortage in 5 or 10 years.
So this one policy makes it harder to fill positions in primary care, which means worse healthcare access and quality in the precise rural and low-income areas that already struggle to attract any highly qualified medical personnel, let alone specialized physicians.
And let's not forget, the Department of Education also targeted social work programs for this reclassification.
Right.
Social workers are absolutely essential community and mental health providers. They are the professionals who often work directly with the most vulnerable populations in federally supported environments.
And this connects the specific loan cap policy to what critics are calling Project 2025's broader assault on the very enforcement mechanisms that are designed to protect those vulnerable populations.
Yes. The blueprint calls for abolishing the Department of Education, which is the agency that enforces Title VI of the Civil Rights Act.
Okay. And central to the Project 2025 legal strategy is this explicit rejection of something called the disparate impact theory of liability. It's a very complex legal concept, but it's so central to enforcing civil rights that we need to explain it clearly.
Let's try.
So let's slow down and define it. Let's use a concrete, accessible example. What does disparate impact actually mean in practice?
Okay. Disparate impact essentially means that a policy or practice, even if it looks completely neutral on its face, can still be found to be discriminatory if it disproportionately harms a protected group, like a racial or ethnic group. And the policy isn't absolutely necessary for achieving some legitimate goal.
So a classic example that critics often cite is school discipline.
Perfect example.
A school district might have a facially neutral dress code, or maybe a subjective discipline policy. It punishes disruptive behavior very harshly. But in practice, when you look in the data, the application of that policy results in vastly higher rates of suspension for Black students compared to white students.
Exactly. Disparate impact is the legal tool that allows enforcement agencies to challenge that policy. Not because the policy explicitly mentions race, it doesn't, but because the effect is discriminatory. It's a crucial tool for addressing systemic bias.
And Project 2025 advocates for rejecting this theory across the entire federal government.
Yes, they insist that discrimination must be proven to be intentional, which is a much, much harder bar to clear.
So if the Department of Education is abolished and this legal tool of disparate impact is eliminated, the federal government's ability to protect students from racial discrimination, whether it's related to access, debt, or treatment in schools, is just severely hamstrung.
That's what critics call the synergistic consequence that is so alarming. You attack the funding for the advanced degrees that produce the professionals, the nurses and social workers who staff these vulnerable communities, and you simultaneously dismantle the core legal tools you need to enforce civil rights protections within those same communities.
It paints a picture where the entire system just becomes less capable of addressing inequality and public welfare issues right across the board. The elimination of expertise and the restriction of opportunity, they seem to work in concert.
Yes, they do.
The administrative action taken by the Department of Education on these loan caps, it really seems to exemplify a pattern of sweeping, ideologically driven changes. And they're being initiated through executive fiat, not through transparent legislative debate.
It's a key part of what critics see as a larger plan to just bypass Congress altogether.
In this pattern, it contrasts so sharply with the legislative struggles we're seeing in Washington right now, especially over things that require bipartisan compromise, like, say, stabilizing the healthcare market. The fight over the enhanced Obamacare premium subsidies is a perfect case study.
It really is. Those enhanced subsidies, they keep premiums affordable for millions of Americans who buy their coverage through the ACA marketplaces.
And they're set to expire on December 31st. An expiration that threatens massive premium spikes and a potential loss of coverage for millions of vulnerable households.
And congressional leaders, both Republicans and Democrats, they are acutely aware that letting these subsidies expire right before a major election would be a political disaster.
Of course.
Yet the administration has reportedly signaled that it is exceedingly unlikely to extend the ACA subsidies or to offer its own legislative solution.
Which is a remarkable contrast. On one hand, you have this very precise, quiet administrative action, the loan cap reclassification, that implements an ideological goal with incredible speed.
And on the other hand, you have this politically necessary but very messy legislative issue with the ACA subsidies that the administration is apparently unwilling to engage with. It's forcing vulnerable members of Congress to try and craft a solution all on their own.
It suggests that administrative energy and bandwidth is being prioritized for policies that dismantle existing structures, like the education loan system,
rather than for policies that maintain or stabilize the existing social safety nets, even ones that are as politically popular as the ACA subsidies.
And this targeting of expertise, of career professionals, it extends far beyond the Department of Education. I mean, the Project 2025 blueprint details a really concerted effort to dismantle core government services and replace meritocracy with loyalty.
The example that comes up most frequently is the plan to reinstate something called Schedule F.
Schedule F.
This would reclassify tens of thousands of career civil servants, we're talking experts in their fields, from climate modeling to public health. It would reclassify them as policymaking roles.
And why is that so crucial?
Because Schedule F makes it far, far easier to fire these career civil servants without cause and replace them with partisan loyalists.
Which directly threatens the scientific integrity and the institutional memory of the entire federal government.
And you see other proposals, like the elimination of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA.
NOAA provides all of our weather, ocean, and climate data. It's used by federal agencies, farmers, businesses. Everyone.
Right. You eliminate the data that expertise relies upon, and eventually you eliminate the expertise itself.
Critics also point to similar ideological moves in foreign policy reporting. Sources indicate that the administration intends to remove sections from the official human rights reports, specifically sections that discuss discrimination against women, LGBTQ+ people, disabled people, and indigenous people.
The stated reason is to, quote, increase readability and remove redundancies.
But the critics argue that this restructuring minimizes or even eliminates federal documentation and criticism of systemic violence and discrimination against these specific marginalized groups internationally. It effectively reduces the scope of human rights protection that the U.S. government even chooses to prioritize.
So what connects all of these seemingly disparate rollbacks, the loan caps, Schedule F, NOAA, the changes to the human rights reports?
The systematic goal, as articulated by the critics of Project 2025, is to dismantle expertise and replace it with ideological conformity.
Exactly. The loan cap on nursing degrees is simply a frontline manifestation of a much broader strategy to control the levers of government and shape society according to a very specific philosophical framework.
It really forces us back to the argument that this technical rule change wasn't an accident. It's an implementable step in a wide-ranging ideological plan, one designed to reshape American society, restrict educational attainment, and disproportionately impact women and minorities.
Which, according to the sources we've reviewed, is not a bug, but a carefully engineered feature of the entire plan.
So we started this by looking at what seemed like a simple bureaucratic decision by the Department of Education to reclassify advanced nursing degrees.
Right, a decision to limit their access to federal Grad PLUS loans, which pushes many of these essential programs beyond the financial reach of students who don't come from wealthy families.
And we've established how critics interpret this policy as a specific, actionable lever within this vast ideological Project 2025 agenda. A plan that is engineered, they argue, to enforce a specific conservative social structure.
And it does that by restricting access to professional pathways that are overwhelmingly used by women and minorities, all under the reported rationale that these educational subsidies interfere with marriage and family formation.
And the consequences are severe and they're multifaceted. A higher debt burden for anyone who does manage to attend, reduced access to high-paying careers, exacerbated racial and economic inequality, and a potential deepening of the nursing and primary healthcare crisis, especially in underserved American communities.
The urgency here is vital. The sources we've looked at highlight that citizens and professional organizations are actively resisting these changes right now. They're using petitions and public awareness campaigns because these kinds of policy shifts are often designed to take effect months in the future.
So if you're someone who values robust healthcare access, or if you believe in maintaining pathways for professional advancement for women and for people of color, the argument is that the future of that workforce is directly threatened by this administrative action.
It is.
So let's leave you with the question that really connects this policy to the public interest. We've analyzed the argument that restricting federal educational subsidies is, according to critics, linked to a goal of boosting marriage and birth rates.
Okay.
So if the ultimate goal is truly to promote family and fertility in America, the critics are asking this. Is it a functional strategy to simultaneously threaten the supply of highly trained nurses, nurse practitioners, and other medical professionals, the very people who are essential for ensuring the health and safety of future mothers, children, and the entire American public?
The conflict that we've uncovered today is really between this ideological compliance with a rigid social vision and the practical demands of public welfare. That's the tension that's embedded in this seemingly simple student loan cap. Something to mull over as you consider the role of policy in shaping not just our future workforce, but our society as a whole.